on the continuous delivery YouTube channel, we have a Patreon supporters, a group of Patreon supporters, and when we're going to do one of these things, we often ask them to see if they've got any questions. One of the questions that Guy from Patreon asked was, I'll read it out to you. I'd be curious to hear Nicole's thoughts on ways other than presenting data to convince people to try something new. So I know this might not necessarily be your part of the problem because you're the person that's presenting the data, but I think it's a reasonable comment to say that often to win an argument, data's not enough. You and I would both, I think that it's vitally important if we are to remain rational in making those kinds of choices. But what's your experience of just trying to get some of those people, those doubters, those laggers that maybe you were talking about before, to listen? Because I think that what we're saying, I mean, sorry, I'm going off on a sidebar now, but you already mentioned this is about much more than just the technicalities. We're talking about improving people's lives because that's what the research says. There's less burnout, there's greater work-life, people's perceived work-life balance is improved by adopting these kinds of behaviours for software development. So how do we convince people that that these things are in their own interest and that they should be taking them more seriously? Do you have any views on that? I'm happy if you want to pass.
It's such a great question. And unfortunately, the answer here is it depends, right? I too have faced this, so don't worry. It's not just you, the royal you. And I think a lot of it comes down to sitting and listening and getting curious and trying to make sure that you understand the other person's point of view and make sure that they know that they feel heard. And then also, appealing to the things that might resonate with them, right? And then try to understand what some of the blockers or what the resistance might be coming from, right? Is it because there is a lack of resources? Is it because they're just tired because they've tried so many things? Is it because the data is not compelling? Is it because the data isn't compelling? It might be compelling for them, but they know that the data isn't going to be compelling for their boss. Do you need to appeal to a sense of expertise? And that doesn't mean like bring me in, right? Like I've been in places where they're like, I don't want to hear from you because you're not, like, you're an expert over there, but you're not an expert here.
Yeah.
And so then it's kind of like going around and really listening to and trying to surface what are the things that are going to help and going to resonate, and what is the problem and what is the felt need. And frankly, like sometimes the thing that you're trying to talk about or trying to share either doesn't solve their problem, or they don't have the problem that you think, or they don't feel the problem that you think is there.
Yeah. I often frame my version of I think the same advice, which is first have the conversation on their terms, not yours. Don't go and tell people that you want to do continuous integration. Tell people that you want to you want to make sure that we can deliver software faster and more safely into the hands of users. What matters to the people is what really matters, and different people will frame the problem differently. And the other thing, if you want to win friends and influence people, is try and identify a problem that they have that you can solve using these techniques. And if you can solve a problem using these techniques, you'll definitely win them over, and they'll be more impressed now and more willing to listen, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love your point about having that conversation on their terms, and sometimes sharing, if not data. Sometimes some people don't respond to data, some people respond to stories. Some people don't do stories, some people do data. I remember joining a company, and I've been at many companies and organizations, and I joined and I was like, it is so difficult here. And I was just kind of joking with my manager. I was like, you realize this is hard. It shouldn't be this hard. And he goes, no, it's fine here. You're just onboarding. And I'm like, I don't think no, 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 no. And this
Yeah,
is where I try to appeal to authority, my authority, right? I'm like, no, I don't think
yeah,
you understand. I'm the expert in the space. This is what I
yeah,
do. I've been many
yeah,
places. This is hard. This is harder
yeah,
than it should be. But this person had been at the company for well over a decade
yeah,
and had just kind of gotten used to all of the systems, had all of the shortcuts, all of the backdoors, all of the bookmarks, all of the things. And so I kind of had to wait a few months and take a few notes, but then help later come back and help paint this picture and share this story of what it felt like to be a developer and to do software engineering
yeah,
here, and what it felt like and what it meant to be a software engineer at a handful of other companies
yeah,
that looked quite similar. And
yeah,
what could it look like? And was this something that we wanted to explore? And like, if this was definitely a no, then like that's cool. But I also kind of had to be there for a little bit, not just be all like reactionary, but like my like personal like appeal to authority didn't work. Data didn't work. I totally like came with numbers. I came with no. It needed to be like a very different approach.
yeah, yeah, and that resonates with me. That the one of my experiences that was reminding me of as you were describing it. I worked with a team that was building some complex software, and I was helping them to adopt better software engineering practices. And at one point, I was pairing with this guy, and we were refactoring some code. And I said, "Oh, we could kind of pull that out as a separate class, and we could use that over here, and that would be a really good move." And he just kind of slumped. His body language was all kind of depressed. And I was, "What's the matter?" And he said, in order to create a new class, I've got to fill in a form and get permission, and I've got to ask somebody else to do all this to create a new class, in C sharp." And I'm going, "What?" And everybody in that organization thought it was perfectly normal. So
Wild.
it's just unbelievable. So it was a process of about 4 days to create a new class.
I love that you brought this up because I was also just thinking sometimes you also just need to talk to someone else.
Yeah, 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 yeah. My friend Dan North, when we worked together at ThoughtWorks, he came up with a bunch of what he called consultancy patterns, and one of his consultancy patterns was follow the line of most resistance. So you find we can't do that because we can't do that. Okay, why can't we do that? Oh, we can't do that because X says we can't do it. Okay, let's go and talk to X. And you just keep doing that until you find the person who says, "Yeah, of course you can do it." This clip was taken from my podcast, The Engineering Room with Dave Farley, a monthly podcast with some of the brightest minds in software engineering. You can find full episodes on all your favourite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. Your support helps us to bring you these regular episodes, so please leave your positive review on your preferred podcast platform to help us to continue to grow and bring you great guests and their insights. Thank you very much for listening.